All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you guys so much for coming and joining us today at the Help Network. My name is Eddie, and I'm going to be your host today. And thank you guys so much for joining us in Dorms to Development. So if you guys can please join me in welcoming our 5 special guests. We have Jackie Shriver-Sladek, we have Chad Bedell, we have Brad Beaumont, Tyrone Forte, and Peter Zinda. Hello, welcome in.
Hello, thanks for having us.
So just to start off, we're going to keep things pretty casual. If you guys can go around one by one, introducing who you are, what you do, just the usual.
Do you want to call us off?
Yeah, sure.
Are we the same order on everyone's screen? I never know.
We'll go with what I see on my screen. We'll start with Jackie.
Cool. I am Jackie Shriver-Sladek. I am the senior manager of VO production at Riot Games. I manage a team of voice producers that handle all of the interactive and marketing related work that relates to voiceover for Riot's games.
All right, next up we have Chad.
Hey everybody, I'm Chad. I'm a re-recording mixer, sound designer for the marketing team at Riot Games. So we kind of work on all the different games and all the different things that you see on YouTube.
All right, awesome. Next we have Brad.
Hey, what's up, gang? I'm Brad Beaumont. I'm the senior manager of sound design in the entertainment division here at Riot, working on stuff like Arcane and future cool stuff. Hi.
All right. Hello. Next up, we have Tyrone.
Hi, I'm Tyrone Forte. I am the VO designer on Valorant, one of the games we work on at Riot. And my job is basically, I'm basically in charge of any in-game VO. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, and last but not least, we have Peter.
Hi, I'm Peter Zinda. I'm the audio director for Valorant, also by way of being a sound designer.
All right, thank you guys so much for joining us. And of course, if you guys have any questions, drop them in the Q&A section of the Zoom, and we'll try getting to them when we can in the second half. But for now, we have a huge story to listen to because all 5 of our lovely guests here have a history. So let's go ahead and pick that apart. Starting off, how did you guys all meet? Clearly, the title of this is Dorms to Development, but I'd love to hear firsthand from you guys, and anyone's welcome to jump in.
Oh boy.
Brad, take it.
You guys should start with the dorms part.
Yeah, Brad should start. Go ahead.
Damn it. Okay. You picked the most long-winded person to tell the most long, convoluted story. Perfect. We might need that extra time. So how did this start? Jackie, Chad, and I went to college together at the University of Cincinnati. The College Conservatory of Music there still has an electronic media program. And yeah, we were all kind of focused in audio, especially towards our junior, senior years. And there was Jackie, feel free to jump in. Chad, feel free to jump in. There was a couple of internships that focused on finding LA homes for folks that were focused on audio. I didn't get one of those internships. I can't remember which one it was. Do you guys remember what they were called?
So my story is that I applied for an internship that was going to take me to Aspen. There was an Aspen music school that was beautiful, classical music, lots of great stuff related to recording. And I applied for that. And instead of that, the dean of the school was like, hey, you could do that, or we have this other internship that you could do at a sound design place in Los Angeles at the Sound Deluxe Design Music Group that did location-based entertainment, commercials, and video game sound design. And I got to pick because I was a very lucky gal, and I chose, instead of Aspen, to go to Los Angeles to a thing that I didn't understand what any of those words meant when they said location-based entertainment, commercials, or video games. I was like, any of those have sound design? I had no idea. Fascinating.
All right. And then just so we get everyone's stories. Tyrone and Peter, did you guys also have a background in games and whatnot in college as well, or how did you guys end up coming to where you are right now?
I can go first with that, I guess. So I actually went to school in Los Angeles, and I studied audio. And I never thought I would be in like I as a person, as an individual, I was very into video games and still am. But I never thought I'd be doing video games. I thought I'd be doing film or television. But my professor got me into contact with Sound Deluxe DMG. Um, and that's kind of where I had my start as sort of a freelance studio assistant. And that's where I met everyone on this panel. I think they had all. I don't know exactly how long everyone had been at Sound Deluxe before I had, joined as a, in my first year. Um, but I think I met Brad, Chad, and Peter because they were as they were working there, and then Jackie, I think, was a fairly consistent client, and I think that's how I met her, was through various VO sessions that she would attend.
Peter?
Yeah, I met all of these people at Sound Deluxe, but I got my degree in film. So I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in film, and came to Los Angeles with the goal of working on movies, and also had a chance to work on games at Sound Deluxe Design Music Group, which is what it was called at the time. And I really enjoyed it. Like, I had played games as a kid, but hadn't really thought about it as a career. And I really liked all of the people I got to meet in the game industry, and all of the amazing sounds we got to work on. And so over time, I split my time between games and movies for a long time, and then eventually committed to doing games full time.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So obviously, everyone here knows each other. Everyone here has worked with each other. Does anyone have any stories about the earliest memories about meeting or working with each other, whether it was in like development or just, in any sort of way, like even back in school or anything like that?
I think just to fill in some of the blanks with the Sound Deluxe, like early of us all sort of coming together. Jackie came out to LA first of her, Chad, and I. And then I think I came out maybe a month after, and then Chad maybe a couple months after that. And Jackie and Chad both had these internships that kind of parlayed into full-time positions at Sound Deluxe DMG. And then I came on about probably 6 months later as a, I don't know what, graveyard shift VO editor. And do I have that right, Chad?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, you have the timeline correct. Jackie
Okay.
I had the same Ziv Award is what they were called
Yes,
from college.
yes.
Got it.
She had it, and then the following summer I had an internship with Sound Deluxe DMG at the time, and a lot of it was taking notes in VO sessions for EverQuest 2. It was a lot of VO at the time.
EverQuest 2 was actually like a massive part of all of our early.
Yeah.
It was such a big project that it spanned like all of us starting out, and it needed as many like beginner level people, like note takers and like dialogue editors. It needed a lot because it was such a giant project for like a relatively small company.
Yeah.
Doing all of it. So.
And before we had things kind of a little more streamlined, I mean, we were taking notes on paper scripts with pencils, and thinking about that now, it's just like, wow, nobody would ever do that. But those were the times, and that was figuring it all out. And that was also a giant scaled game, just so much work compared to a lot of the other games at the time. So
Yeah, and so when the three of us were kind of cutting our teeth there, Peter was very, very well established as a monster of sound design within, not just DMG, but Sound Deluxe proper, and I'd say movies in general. So he was one of the guys that we all kind of looked up to as a total boss, as a baller in the sound design realm, and was really, really gracious with his time, and mentored Chad and I for many, many years in all manner of sound design insanity. And then we were all, I think Jackie, you mentioned you had left at that point, or you were gone at that point, but Tyrone came on a few years later. As there were some other transitions happening, I was sort of on my way over to Riot. I think probably soon after Tyrone came aboard. So we didn't have too much time to work together, but that's kind of how the whole, I don't know, the
Brad,
whole connection.
Do you remember your sound design test to go from intern to full-time job?
Yeah, I do.
Do you, Peter? Do you remember it?
I remember it. It was the sludge gun.
I remember
Please
hearing that.
elaborate. Please
That was
elaborate.
the challenge was to design a weapon, and I remember yours. It just stuck in my memory that you had not just designed like a firing sound, but if I remember correctly, it had a whole wind up into like the firing sound, and there was a lot of goop, and
Yeah,
made a big impression.
I played a lot of Unreal Tournament in college, so it was that style of sci-fi weaponry was baked into my brain, I think. So yeah.
That's awesome. Tyrone, do you have any early memories working and coming in as well?
You're muted, Tyrone. Or we're not hearing you.
That's so funny that like your guys' history goes that far back and like everyone has looped in together. That's awesome. While we wait for Tyrone, just so we get like a little bit of understanding on the scope, like how big are typically the teams that you guys work in when working together on like these kinds of games and whatnot?
So like when we were at DMG, Peter, that'd be a good one for you. I think Peter served in a supervisorial capacity quite a bit when we were all there.
I think like there were probably fewer than 20 people at that division of Sound Deluxe
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
worked on games specifically. It might have been more than 20, but like there were not that many rooms. We were vendors, so you were always going out and trying to get enough work to keep the whole crew busy, and making commitments and struggling to meet them, making sure that your clients were happy and everything was done on budget. That was just day in and day out. The standards were super high.
Mhm.
And I think it was a really great environment to learn because your clients hold you accountable as a vendor every day to like the highest standards.
Mhm.
And you got a chance to work with so many different teams. We worked with people from Microsoft, from Capcom, Platinum, like Sony, many different companies, like too many to list, but we learned a lot from all of them. I feel like every one of those people has had a huge influence on me as a sound designer and audio director.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds very intimate and like just a great community. Like you guys have to like, learn to become really good friends and whatnot. So it's really awesome to see that, especially with your guys' relationships now. Tyrone, are we back? Were you able to fix?
Okay, yes, you
Yes.
can't hear me.
Yes.
What was the initial question?
Yeah, just any early memories of, coming into the loop and, just being on the job and meeting everyone and working together.
I don't have any specific stories, but I do remember just everyone being like welcoming and easy to work with. Just as someone who was fresh out of college, like you hear, I would have professors who would always, prepare me for like big egos, people who would just, treat me poorly because they could, and everyone here was very nice. I think I worked with Chad and Jackie a little more than I did with Brad and Peter. I think Brad and Peter, I saw you two more in passing.
Yeah.
But Chad, I think you engineered a few sessions while I was an assistant, and then Jackie, I mentioned before. I think you were with Sony at the time. So yeah, I mean that's.
I think Tyrone, you had joined kind of after there had been a real split in, in the earlier days. Like we all did everything. Like one day you were doing sound design, and the next day you were engineering a voiceover session, and you know, it was all very fluid. And EverQuest was one of the games I remember just having a gigantic script, like more lines of dialogue. It got more specialized into a dedicated voiceover crew and a
yeah.
dedicated sound design crew. And we did, like, I would pass you in the hallways or, you know, at the copier all the time.
Yeah,
Copier,
yeah.
specifically the
Fax
copier.
machine.
The
Oh,
fax mach-
because there were
the
so many
fax machine
paper
was
scripts,
actually
right?
the fax machine was actually still part of our lives at that point. I have to say, the union still took Station 12 via fax, and there were certain voice directors that we were working with on that game that would receive communications via fax, which is just wild.
And this all predated Facebook and YouTube
Truth.
and Twitter.
I think, you know, now, especially because things have changed in this like Zoom era, like how has the dynamic shifted as well, especially because a lot of us have been working from home or remotely or anything like that. Were you guys like ready for that sort of work as well? Or you know, like how's the transition and whatnot?
Been a long transition. I mean, I've been at Riot for 9 years now. Peter, you're probably 7-ish.
2015, yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a while. It's been quite a journey from, you know, leaving at that point it was still Soundalux when I came to Riot. And soon became you know, well, not became, but a lot of folks from Soundalux ended up transitioning to Formosa, who, you know, Riot's had an amazing partnership with for a long time now. Yeah, it's just a completely different, you know, different working environment, different day to day. One of the great things about working at a place like DMG was, you know, you might be working on a Need for Speed game for 3 months, and then you're doing fantasy, you know, wizard spell stuff for 3 months, and then you might be doing cinematics for, you know, Gears of War for a month, and then it was just like, you know, rapid fire, kind of being put through your paces, learning all kinds of new techniques, new sound design methods. That was really, really special. And then, you know, coming to a place like Riot, the pace is a lot slower in a lot of ways. In some ways it's not. But you're kind of focused on one product and seeing that through. So I don't know if that answered any question at all. It was just a lot of me talking. Sorry.
No, for sure. Yeah, it's honestly it's been a lot. So I completely understand, especially because of the day-to-day operations and how like just things, they've always been hectic, but now even more so, like another wrench just gets thrown into the mix and all that. So I completely get it.
Well,
And
once
I
upon-
definitely wasn't. I'm sorry,
Please,
Jesse, go ahead.
No, Chad.
I was just going to say, I wasn't ready for working at home. It was a big adjustment for me. You know, I'd really always worked in a studio, and, you know, the big adjustment of, oh man, okay, we got to figure out how to do this and put on headphones. And, you know, I think that was a big adjustment for me. I think, you know, technology wise and Zoom wise and collaboration, we always found a way, but it was okay, how does this sound, you know, when I'm sitting in my bedroom with headphones on, as opposed to in a mixed stage. So definitely a switch up for me.
And all of us together, like, it's funny if you ask us, the people in this class or in this like Zoom call, when we started out, we were literally seeing each other in the hallway or at 11 p.m. or whatever, and we were exchanging ideas in the hallway and talking about what we were doing because we were all there in person, and we were also super excited about what we were doing, and there was just a lot. It was very like frenetic time in our lives of like, even if we were all working on EverQuest 2 in different places, like sound design or dialogue editorial or like VO production, all of it. And you think about it now, or like what that might have been like in 2020 if we were all together, of doing that completely siloed. The magic is gone. Like the capability of doing it is there because we are all, and the people who came after us and that we've taught are capable of all of the things that you need to do to be able to get the job done. But some of the magic is gone of, I'm at the coffee machine and this thing is irritating me, and like, oh, but here's how it's cool. this voiceover problem can be solved by sound design, and we're talking about it and like, oh, if you do something differently in the booth that might make it cooler for sound design, like all these conversations are lost. And that's not to say like it all went away. Like we've all done a wonderful job of making magic out of the pandemic, but we all had that beautiful moment in 2000, like 4, 5, 6 that we're talking about when we were all very young, of being able to have those moments, and those were really special.
Yeah, actually, that's the perfect transition into the next question I had for you guys was that, you know, because you guys like know each other well and your jobs and whatnot, have there been like situations where you guys have helped each other in each other's positions or like stepped in or, you know, something where like just having each other and knowing how you guys work together and whatnot, has solved any problems or anything like that?
I think one example of that, was very recently, we were kind of like going over our voiceover process for Valorant. And, we hit up Jackie and she said, oh, I just did this for League of Legends. And we knew each other already from those times. So it was really easy to just say, oh, you did this. Why don't you take the lead on this? You can take us through it. You've already done like 10 meetings about exactly the same thing. And it went incredibly well, I thought. Which is also just a testament to your expertise and abilities. But it was nice to see a familiar face, for sure. Do you guys have any other examples of that?
I have an example of like Tyrone joining the Valorant team after there had been a person in the position that he was in previously who went on to an R&D project, leaving something that felt like a gaping hole, like, oh gosh, we don't know what's going to happen with this particular position. And then Tyrone is announced as the person in that role, and it was like, oh gosh, I don't have to worry about anything. It's Tyrone. It's great. I'm so excited that Tyrone is in that position because I know that I already have all of the trust and I know the expertise. I already know exactly how seriously he's going to take this position. It was just one of those things where you were like, one less thing to worry about.
And even a step before that, I found out that Tyrone would be a great candidate for this from talking to another person who I knew from Soundalux, who we were looking for someone who not only knew voiceover, but also had some tech chops with, scripting in Unreal, which is a big part of this position. And it's an incredibly difficult thing to find, is someone who knows the audio side of it, can do middleware implementation of Wwise, and can do the Unreal side of it. And that person said, oh, well, Tyrone's been taking computer science classes. Like, you should talk to him. And, what an incredible, connection to make, because, it's fantastic to have Tyrone here.
Which, by the way, I also just have to shout out Tyrone for this. Tyrone was working as a contract dialogue editor for a very long time between like Soundalux before his time at Sony his time at Riot. And Tyrone like saw a part of the business where he recognized there was a gap in people with certain skill sets, and he went out and got those skill sets and then became an incredibly valuable resource for places like Riot. It's one of those things that was like, he came with a certain skill set, he saw that another skill set was necessary, he acquired that skill set, and then he got the job that he was looking for. And I'd love to honestly hear more from you, Tyrone, about what that process was like, because you went from like a dialogue editor to someone who has a whole lot more skills than just dialogue editorial. Not that that's anything minor.
Yeah. So kind of what my journey was that, I started out as an studio assistant. And then slowly I kind of started actually engineering my own sessions, and then also getting into dialogue editing, some asset management. There was always this sense I wanted to do something more. And it was kind of like, well, maybe I want to get into development, like just something else with VO or something else with audio. And so that's when I started to kind of explore Unreal, Wwise, just implementation. And then to sort of because I there got to be a point where it's like, well, I don't even really know how much deeper I need to dig. Maybe I should take, programming classes uh, as like an extra edge, and all these sort of things that I did. Like doing Unreal, Wise, making demos in my free time. Like I never knew if it was going to amount to anything. It was just kind of like, and I didn't really think it would. It's just like you just have to let that one tiny part of your brain like believe that it will, so you keep going, and yeah, eventually, yeah, it just happened to work out. Like like the day I got contacted by Riot was like just out of nowhere. Like I wasn't like actively hunting for a job. I wasn't like it's just like one day I get an email and then now I'm here. So yeah, so it was kind of just a lot of build up and preparation, and then one day it just happened to pay off. So yeah.
I also just like need to take a second, like from the message that the Help Network says, it's really awesome that you guys are just hyping each other up and recalling all these stories. Like I can tell there's so much love and history behind it. So that's really awesome to hear from you guys.
I have to say, I'm just gonna interject to say, I think like the description of this was like a decade of something. I've known Brad for 20 years. I've known Chad for 20 years. Like it's crazy. We've known each other for so long. And like Peter, I've known you for almost 20 years. We met in 2004. Tyrone probably like 2006, 7, 8, somewhere in that.
No, I joined SoundCloud in 2011. So probably
11. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So that was closer to that, but like somehow, some way, there are corners of game audio that actually go back 20 plus years.
It's true.
That's so
And
awesome.
I
Yeah.
still work with Scott Gershon and his group Sound Lab, which is part of Keywords. They're a major vendor for us on Valorant. Yeah, so that connection goes back, to 1995 when I joined SoundWorks.
It's awesome to see that you guys are still pioneering the games industry today, and that relationship is what's able to make these games as great as they are now. I was wondering, is there anything that, it doesn't have to be related to work, but any lessons that you guys have learned from each other, after knowing each other for so long? It could be life, it could be work, it could be, how to be happy, how to find your space and whatnot. Just anything that you guys have gleaned from each other. I'm starting, or anyone's free to go, actually.
I mean, I was forged in the sound design fire by working with Peter, like day in and day out for a really, really long time. Pretty much the entirety of my time working at DMG, I was a lot of times on projects with Peter or maybe one or two other soups. But yeah, that was just like, I mean, that was my sound design school basically for, I think I was there for 9 years. So certainly that, and I still bug him from time to time about things here.
Now it's mutual.
Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. I learned a ton from Peter. I remember early on, there was a commercial that I had to fly to Moline, Illinois to record John Deere tractors. And, I'd done a lot of musical recording in Aspen and classical music recording, but I'm like, man, Peter, you gotta, and I don't even know if you remember this, but it's like, man, you gotta give me some pointers on microphones and wind protection and, all that kind of stuff. And, always so gracious to share knowledge. And, it was, it turned out okay. I made it work, standing in the middle of the cornfield, chasing.
You helped sell some tractors.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've been lucky to work at a lot of places. Like Riot is certainly this way, where people are happy to share knowledge, and it's very baked into the expectations at Riot that like as you move through the ranks and levels, like the more expectation there is that your value explicitly comes from how you level up those around you, which I think is great. I think there are some pockets of the industry where people might kind of hoard those techniques or not want to share, and I get that. Like it's competitive out there and everybody's looking for an edge, and especially if you're freelance, it might be more in your interest, I guess, to do that. But I think you really learn a lot from the people around you. I've certainly, uh, had an amazing mentor in Scott Gershon, and have learned from, even the people who you might not work with directly, like Harry Cohen at Soundalux was an incredible god tier sound designer, and you would think you knew what something should sound like. And Harry would do a movie, any movie, big or small, that had that category of sound in it, and he would just do something that like blew everything else out of the water. So you'd be like, oh, I thought I knew what a stab should sound like, but now all the other stabs are terrible, and like these have set a new bar.
Plus
You know,
one to that.
there's a lot of ways to learn and get inspired.
And I'll say, like, I, not to belabor it, but I thought when I went to college that I wanted to be a recording engineer. I wanted to record bands. And I went through college doing that with like Chad and Brad, understanding that, like, part of that path. And then I got an internship at a place that I couldn't do that. And I was a note taker doing voiceover for video games, which, if you're a sound design person, if you're like a sound related person, it's sort of like, wait, what? That's a thing that exists? Because I thought I wanted to record Weezer. Like I wanted to record Weezer records. And now here I am recording like Resident Evil 4. I'm taking notes in that particular recording session. And there's an awful lot there that also, I then got to learn so much about so many other things that I didn't know existed. Like I didn't really understand what sound design was. And then I got to watch Brad, who had a place for that in his heart where I didn't. I wanted music, and like voice and performance were my thing. And like Brad's my best friend, and he's playing me his Goop Gun sound test for Peter in his sound design room at like 2 a.m. because he's working third shifts and I'm working late, and hearing that and going like, wow, my friends are so talented. This is crazy. And also, like, I didn't know any of these jobs existed. Like when I thought I wanted to record Weezer like songs, that's what I went to school for. And then through the nature of this internship and then like first job, I learned all of these other things that you can do as a sound professional, and then was put in the company of these amazing people like who had other specialties. Like Peter is like the gun god, like the field recording gun god. Like you want to know, you want to make something happen, like he's your guy. Brad can make a slime gun that sounds insane. I'm like your voiceover person. And we just had so many fun things that you could specialize in that none of us even knew existed until we got here and got to start playing around with it.
Yeah, Tyrone, do you want to wrap it up? Is there any like lessons that you've learned from everyone?
I will say one of the things I was most nervous about coming to Riot was just, I'm a VO designer, and I don't do a lot of like sound design the way most people usually think about it, but I do a lot of voice processing. And I had never done that before. Like I had always worked with like raw audio files, edited them, made them clean, but never made them sound like designed them. And so Peter's been a big help with that, like just kind of helping to guide like my ear towards a skill that like I didn't even well, I knew it existed, but never even thought about. And two has been, a very just a very new thing for me. So I mean that's one of the biggest things like I've learned like from Peter after coming to Riot.
I think your years and years in the booth like really have given you an incredible set of instincts for voiceover and performance, and how important intelligibility is. Because even your test, you said I haven't really done this before, and I was like, well, just go for it. Like it was the test of someone who had done this for a long time.
Tyrone, did you have a question?
No, I accidentally hit the wrong button.
I was like, by all means. Um, that's awesome. And as you guys may probably already know, our community here at Help, we're full of hopeful voice actors and game designers and developers and audio engineers. Is there any advice you can give to anyone that's hopeful and wanting to enter the industry?
Boy, I would say like these past few years, like being able to record yourself has been like make or break for certain roles. Like, you know, I know many voiceover actors now like have their own setups, have, built a booth, whether it's, pretty homemade or more professional, depending on, how far along in their career those people are. But, you know, learning how to use a digital audio workstation and a microphone and, record yourself without distortion, um, can make the difference between getting a gig or not getting a gig. And I think it's not too hard to learn.
Yeah,
I
anyone
just
else?
I just add to that and just say experiment and play around and have fun with it. I don't think I did enough of that early on in my career. It's just like, take some crazy plugins or, just dive in. Just because you haven't done this before doesn't mean you can't. And use that creative brain and stretch and just do it and have fun.
I have to say, a fun side story to that Chad's not going to bring up that I will is that
no.
By all
Oh,
means, go
no.
ahead.
Fun fact, Brad Beaumont, who's like here for me on the thing, is married to my best friend, Shannon Beaumont. And Shannon and I, for our senior thesis, did an audio drama that had to do with, oh God. Basically, it was like a Fahrenheit 451 kind of deal. It was a censorship thing that Chad helped us do a bunch of Foley for. None of us even knew what Foley was, really. We didn't actually conceive of Foley. We didn't have like a place to do Foley. We just knew that we needed certain sound effects that we didn't have access to in a library, so we needed to make them. So Chad helped us record a bunch of we destroyed a couple of boom boxes in your basement, if I remember correctly. Do you remember that, Chad?
Seems about right. It's a little fuzzy, but I definitely remember breaking things. I don't know where we got them.
We were destroying things obviously it was for a class and it was for our senior thesis and it was for a reason, but it was also just something cool that we wanted to do. And so we did. And I think there's an awful lot of that in the game audio community of, I wonder if we could, so we're just going to go do it. And if you tell other people in your community, hey, I want to do this thing, or I've been thinking about this thing, you'll be met with a whole bunch of people who will say, oh, I've got advice for you, or try here, or this mic is great, or try this material or whatever. And I think the game audio community in general, regardless of if it's voice or sound design, we all recognize each other as part of the same community and are really helpful to one another and want each other to succeed and will be part of each other's success.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything
Get
you
your
guys wanted to
reps.
add?
No, I was gonna say Chad kind of touched on it a little bit. Everyone touched on it a bit, but yeah, just get your reps. The 10,000 hours thing is real, but it's 10,000 hours to learn how to do car sound design well. It's 10,000 hours to learn how to do sci-fi weaponry well. It's 10,000 hours to learn how to do medieval fantasy whatever well. So it's a lot of hours. That's 30,000 hours right there. That's only 3 genres. So
But ask for help and talk to other people who are doing it.
I would
Yeah, for
also say
sure.
everyone you encounter on your journey is going to be a potential future coworker, someone who might be able to give you a job, someone who you might be able to hire someday. So all those interactions really matter. Like it just doesn't pay to treat some work as like, I'm going to put my full effort in and some work I'm not going to, right? Like, and you never know the person who you might see as, if you're more established and might be more entry level, like they could be, you never know where they're going to go. So I think it just pays to do your best all the time. I know that sounds like a platitude, but I think it's true.
I think
sure.
there are no fewer than 6 folks that currently work in the audio discipline at Riot that I, met just randomly at GDC when they were, maybe seniors in high school that just came up to me at the Riot booth or something and just wanted to talk about League of Legends. Yeah, don't be intimidated to just reach out and talk to folks that you think are in these higher up positions, because I guess I am technically, but I'm just a dude now. Like, I like when people come up and talk to me. It's yeah, unless you're
You're-
kind of a scumbag, but
But if you're passionate about any of this, like the only reason any of us are where we are is because we're passionate about it too. So like we love feeling passionate about the same things.
talking shop.
Yeah, talking shop. People coming up and going like, game VO, this particular game VO is a lot of fun. Or like where game VO and sound design correlate. Like it's funny because when I first started, I thought I wanted to be a sound designer. I thought I wanted to be a bunch of things. And I like slowly realized that Chad and Brad were way better at this and that they like felt something real about it that I didn't. And I got to, because I was like surrounded by them because we're all the same age and we're all like at Soundalux at the same time. And they were like super fulfilled by what they were doing. And I was like, I am not good at ambient sound design or whatever it was that I was trying to do. And suddenly someone gave me a voice design task. It's like, oh, this is my lane. This is where I belong. And suddenly was able to go like, oh, Brad and Chad belong over here and they're doing great and I belong over here. And when new people come in, I can help filter them into the places that they should go because there's so many different places you can go in game audio. It's
Keeping
great.
an open mind is really key. Like, even if you find that like, oh, I really wasn't good at that thing, like A, it doesn't mean you won't be good at that in the future. And B, like maybe there's another thing that you would be more suited for or better at or enjoy more.
Awesome. Tyrone, do you have any words of advice, especially because you've had such an extensive career with voiceover and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably more of a general thing, but I would say don't be afraid to give yourself credit, kind of jumping off of what Peter said. Um, I think the first time I ever really gave myself credit was, I think it was back in 2018. Help actually invited me to do like a talk at Game SoundCon on, what was it? It was on recording an audio for performance capture. And that was, even when I was doing the talk, I didn't feel like I knew much, but then like people started asking me questions and people started coming up to me afterwards. And I was like, oh, I actually like knew something about this thing. It only took me 7 years to realize I know things. So yeah, there's a certain point where, and I think my career personally could have gone a little bit faster if I had more confidence in myself and I had been more open about actually like approaching people and saying like, hey, I want to try doing this or I want to try doing that. In the situations where I've just kind of been thrown into something and have been probably the best situations or the situations where I grew the most just because I was kind of forced to do something that turns out I was perfectly qualified to do. I just, never believed that I could do it. So, yeah.
That's 100% awesome advice. Were you gonna say something, Jackie?
I was just gonna ask because I know like Chad and Brad specifically, and with Arcane the way it is, I'm just curious about what it's like to straddle entertainment or like traditional like capital E entertainment, the way that entertainment is conceived of in Hollywood, and games. And like if there's anything that you just have learned or thought about straddling those two places.
I mean, for me, it's about moments. It doesn't really matter if it's a movie, if it's a TV show, if it's a game. You know, that moment when you know, it never happens to me, but when you kill your opponent in League of Legends or Valorant, or you know, you have these moments of, you know, the big trailer ends with, you know, that, oh my gosh, you know, like it doesn't really matter what medium they're in. It matters what you're trying to say and what you're trying to put forth, and it's all the same. There's nuances and differences and technical stuff, but like when it's really all boiled down to it, it's, you know, what are you trying to convey as an artist and as a, you know, person about the Valorant IP or the League IP, or, you know, what is the emotion you want your audience to feel, and that's across however you consume entertainment or interactive games or anything like that. So that's my soapbox for the day.
What Chad said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're always telling a story, whether it's 42 minutes long or 24 frames long, right? If it's just one little quick animation, those are just little micro stories that add up to a bigger story when you're talking about game assets and stuff like that. So I think Chad put it pretty well.
Awesome. Well, that's pretty much all I have for my end, but we do have some questions. If we go a little bit over, let me know if you guys have to head out, but otherwise, we just have a few here. The first one isn't really a question, but it's from Chip, so I just wanted to relay it to you guys. He says, every single person on this panel I personally know and I've had the pleasure to work with over the years, directly or indirectly. I'm so incredibly blessed to have had the pleasure to work alongside you all, insanely talented and passionate professionals. Thank you guys so much for doing this panel. For me too, thank you guys so much for being here.
I have a fun story. So Amanda Wyatt, who is a prolific voice director, her 18-year-old babies graduated high school this last week. But the reason I know Chip at all is because that person had to go on maternity leave early. So I got hired in January. I believe Chip was called in like July because Amanda had to go. And it's wild that it's been, when I read the yes, July, thanks Chip. It says something about a decade of whatever. It's like, no, it's 2 decades. It's 20 years. It's 20 years that a lot of us have known each other. But it's also delightful that there are 20 years of game audio relationships. Like that's cool as shit. We have like a for real foundation now, and we're part of that, and we get to like bring in new people and have those new relationships. So I'm gonna stop talking.
And speaking of relationships, Chip, there's nobody who works a room at GDC like Chip does. Like amazing, makes it look easy, super fun. I think you could do your own workshop on the GDC survival guide.
We have to hear about that soon then. The next question I have is from Praveen, and they ask, how is Blueprint scripting in Unreal related to voiceover? I believe Peter answered it, but it didn't get through to the chat.
Tyrone.
I'll give a short answer and then I'll hand it over to Tyrone. So, you know, one of the ways that that the work gets divided up on Valorant, at least, and I know it's probably different on every team, but so the narrative discipline, the writers write the lines, but audio designs the system that plays those lines. We work with a lot of vendors who do the actual recording and the mastering and editorial on that stuff. But really, we had a voiceover triggering system that was done with a visual scripting system called Blueprints inside of Unreal before we even had a writer. So we knew on the audio discipline that we would need to be able to trigger voiceover, and we identified like where's our airspace, where can the characters talk and where can't they, and worked on figuring that out. And then when writers came on, kind of said, okay, here's what we built. And then there was a big process of collaboration of like, what are other opportunities? When can they talk? What are the big moments? What do you want to reinforce? What's going to have like constant value? And what are those rare occurrences that it's worth doing something to punctuate this like incredible rare thing that a player pulls off in game? So that's the audio's discipline's role related to Blueprints, but really Tyrone is the one who does all that work now, having taken it over for Curtis, who's moved on to another project.
I mean, that was actually a pretty good summation. I don't know how much I can add.
There's more to it, right? Like it's not just like, I don't know, it's a fairly complex thing.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge for me, like I did, learn the basics of Blueprints, and then the challenge for me even now is just learning a system that's already been established, like long before I got to Riot. But yeah, like short answer is just like we trigger a lot of audio using scripting in Unreal.
And do you want to talk at all about like what kind of data we get from the game that tells us, trigger a line or anything like that?
What do you mean, the data? Or
we get like information about the score, who killed who, what players, characters might be on the other team, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. A lot of the triggers are based on what Peter said, like who's on which team, how many kills you've gotten, which round it is. I think one of the most difficult things with our triggering system are, in our game, our characters have a bunch of different abilities to differentiate them. And that's usually when I sort of struggle the most with implementing things, because, sometimes characters will have very unique logic. Some characters can teleport, some characters can, what else? What else? I'm trying to think of examples of what characters can do.
Reyna alt.
Yeah, we have a character that has a completely second set of VO lines with slight processing on it that we had to, we spent a long time working on recently. So yeah, there's just a lot of different information in Valorant that's being, when I say information, I guess I mean more data, like Peter was saying. That when I have to implement something, or especially if something's broken, then I have to figure out why it's broken. Then I have to figure out, okay, like what piece of data is not correct in this string of code that again like was devised like years before I even came to Riot. So yeah, so that's kind of what I use Unreal skills for.
I think that's, not to take over for Edward, sorry, but there is like such a interesting place of the, like, game audio is not just about game audio. Game audio is about game design, or about like everything else. Like voiceover is not just about the voiceover, it's about how the voiceover is implemented, which is about character design, which is about game design, which is about all of those things. And like, I guess if we're talking about things that are interesting to talk about, people who want to get into the industry, it's to not be super crazy focused on like the thing you're into. Like understanding voice design or voiceover for games is very meaningful for a voice actor, but it's also really, really helpful for a voice performer or voice producer or whatever to understand how characters are designed, and therefore how like characters fit into the world, and how like those things correlate all the way back. So it's not just like you're not just in your little part where it's like me and the way that I am conceptualizing a character, which is completely, I'm just here with me and my character, and that's independent of the world that I'm in. But it's also the world, and it's the game. There's like the game world, and then there's like the actual game, and there's so many other places. And understanding like how games get made is actually one of those things that a lot of people don't conceive of when they're craft specialists, like sound designers or voice actors or a lot of things, where they're not totally conceiving of like the entirety of like what it is to work in video games and like all the different things that go into making a video game. And that's not to say that like you have to be an expert at all of those things, but being curious about them and learning about them and learning about how those things touch the thing that you're doing is actually a place where you can become someone who excels and succeeds and is above and is like interested. And I'm gonna run out of ways to say what I'm saying. I'm gonna hope that someone else can maybe take that home, but
No, that literally answers the next question that we had from Mariah, who asked, is there an element of sound design you believe is not super talked about, but important for actors to learn for when they're recording? So that I think that answered it like right on the money. We have time for one more question if you guys don't mind. It's a really personal one. It's just, what game or piece of media inspires your current job the most? Is there a game with specific sound design that inspires you guys?
Working on Arcane, I'd have to say League of Legends. Next.
Anyway, I mean, it doesn't have to be related to your work. It's just like it's something that really like, makes you happy, inspired you to what you guys like to do.
I mean, I will never miss an opportunity to proclaim myself to be a Halo super fan. Like, that franchise has had a huge influence on me as a sound designer and just as a gamer in general. I was an everyday Halo player for many years through many of those games. So they all kind of blur together for me, but I always really enjoy the way they had so many distinct sounds that you could identify and were iconic, and you could hear things happening that you couldn't see, and you would know what was happening, especially in multiplayer. And you can't really, for me, I can't talk about sound design without being, giving credit to Ben Burtt and Star Wars as being, the gold standard I will chase and probably never achieve my whole career. But that was hugely influential on me.
Jackie, you said God of War 2005. Any specific stories behind this one?
that was so I've had the distinct pleasure of working on every God of War game that has currently been released. The next one that comes out will be the first one that I don't have anything to do with. But that I started working on that game as a voiceover professional who knew nothing about anything, and have worked on all of them. And I love them, absolutely adore them. But I'm way more interested in like, I know that Chad and Brad specifically, I know Peter as well, but Peter's like an elder statesman, but Chad and Brad are more my contemporaries who got to work on games that they maybe were like playing or like were interested in playing at the time. Like it's a weird thing to play something that you're excited to play, that you want to be a part of, and I want to hear them talk about that.
Yeah, Chad, if you want to take it over.
I mean, geez, there's been a lot of them, and a lot. I mean, so many. When you asked this question, the first thing I popped into my head was just like, all of the games. I want to take in all of this stuff, and I think I have a tough time when you work on something sometimes just for so long and so detailed that you don't know what you have anymore. Like The Last of Us comes to mind for sure.
Mhm.
That franchise, it's like you spend so much time and working with everybody to make it as good as you can. You're like, man, I think this is really awesome, but I hope this gets across what we want to. And Gears of War, and working with all these incredible people is what has been great. And then working with Peter and Scott on Lost Planet, even going back to then, and like having that game come out and go, yeah, let's see what we did. Like I was like a little kid. I mean, even though we put a lot of sounds in that game, it was like, let's see how this all really comes together in the end.
And then having a hard time getting to some of the bosses to actually hear your sound design. Right.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
I love that all three of you, like Peter, just Lost Planet was such a unique thing. And like Peter, you were like a lead, right? And you were guiding Brad and Chad through some of their sound design chops, like through that.
That game was so great because it had like so many different categories. Like you had mechs, you had giant robots, you had normal weaponry like ballistic weaponry and sci-fi weaponry and aliens of all different kinds. Like it was such a fun game to work on. We were able to work on 1 and 2, and it was just such a great experience. Such a fantastic audio director in Tomoya Kishi, who was so innovative, and he really changed how we worked on games. We did a GDC talk about that. I guess people could probably watch that online, but just the way he brought us in as vendors. The second game, we were able to have a build and put our sounds in and hear what it sounded like in context before we even sent it to them. That was really game changing.
And Tyrone, do you want to take us home? Any games you want to talk about really quickly?
In terms of games that I've worked on, I would say one of the most like rewarding moments for me was I worked on a lot of Skylanders games. When the toys to life genre was very big, and a lot of the people in like my personal life, like outside of work, don't engage in games that much at all. But I have a cousin who, he's 14, or he's 12, whatever. But he was a little kid when the Skylander stuff was coming out, and so it was for the first time I had a family member who was very engaged with something I worked on, and was like impressed that I had worked on this game. He didn't completely understand like that I was a recording engineer. Like he thought like, oh, does that mean Tyrone does a voice in the no. But but he was it was like I earned the respect of a 7-year-old, and that was that was enough for me. So, but in general, like when I've been able to get like even with Valorant, I have some friends who have been like interested in getting into it. So just any time when I can sort of say like, hey, I worked on this, and people are like, oh, like I actually want to engage with this thing you've worked on. That's always been very cool.
That is so awesome. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I could listen to you guys talk forever, but thank you guys so much for donating this hour with us. It was so awesome to get to meet you guys. I hope we can do this again. I'd love to hear even more stories. If we can have you guys again, that'd be great. A little bit of housekeeping. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. If you can, please keep up with us on social media at the Help Network, or check out our future events and sign up for our newsletter at helpnet.com. If you guys want to quickly plug like where we can keep up with you guys, any social media or anything like that, you guys are more than welcome to as well.
Hit me up on LinkedIn. I mean, probably really, actually, I don't use much else. Twitter, you could find me on Twitter.
But we're also really, really deeply crazy into what we do for a living. So if you like have questions or are intrigued about some part of it, like we'll answer. We'll be part of it.
All right, but yeah, thank you guys so much for everything. Like I said, I hope we can have you guys again. But until then, take care, stay safe, stay healthy and happy, and take care. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Edward. Thanks, Help.
Good night, guys.